Hello and welcome to Brain Wealth, the podcast hosted by Bryan Repple. Bryan, it's really good to see you, but I'm going to start by not talking about finance, okay? I know the last time I talked to you, you were training for an ultra endurance event. So I'm kind of curious, how did it go?
Well, it's I'm glad to report in that I completed my first one for 2024. This is the third time doing one of these events, and I've got one more to do in about 3 weeks, and that'll be completing two in 1 year. So that's a challenge itself to do. To do one is great.
Yeah, I have friends who do endurance events. I've got a friend of mine who's actually 73 years old, and he's been doing multiple Ironmans a year for 20 years. But I don't think an Ironman falls under ultra endurance. I think that's just an endurance event.
Yeah, well, it's a very extreme endurance
Yeah.
event, but what makes it ultra is the ability to go for 36 hours. So
God.
we have a 36-hour time limit to complete the challenge. And so the one I just did this year was my second time doing it because last year I came up short. I got dehydrated on the mountain and my body shut down. And I don't like to say I quit, but that was the result. I had to stop in about the 32nd hour, and I just knew I wasn't going to be able to finish. So that task kind of, I want to say haunted me, but stayed with me definitely for a full year. And I was only two participants that came back to do Jackson Hole, Wyoming for a second time.
Wow.
Everyone else who did not finish took their place and said, we're done. And so there were only two of us that came back, said, we're here to finish this thing.
Well, you know what? I'm going to quarrel with you for 1 second because I don't think I'm going to use a word nobody likes to use. You don't think you quit. I think you failed last year. And I think that's important. We call it a failure because it clearly you embraced it and learned from it and came back from it to do something about it. That's what impresses me. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the ability to kind of accept. I had to go back and kind of really do some looking at myself. And, one of the things that the mountain taught me, and people ask, why do you do these things? Why do you do these physical? I mean, sometimes you can see my body is beat up. My hips, things are really tight. And
hours, I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some casualty damage to your body that comes out of it. But I also know that the body can be healed. But one of the lessons I learned 2 years ago, I like to call it whispers from the mountain. And whispers from the mountain is a lot of it's just an analogy of life. But when you're out there in 20 some hours, you've been in the heat, the sun's been beat, because by the way, the mountain's much closer to the sun than where I live in Orlando. So you're at 6,000 to 8,000 feet of elevation. You're in this extreme environment of every step is on a rock, gravel, so your feet are not accustomed to that. So your jagged edges, going up a steep incline about 2,000 feet. But your body gets really just tired and your mind gets exhausted, starts playing games on you. And I remember last year in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m, after going about 16, 18 hours, I heard the mountain whisper to me, and it said to me, today I'm hard. And I'm like, all right, what's this voice? You can call it God, you can call it the mountain, but it was just that voice coming to me. And the mountain said, today I'm hard. I'm like, no kidding. I know you're hard. Yeah, I feel it. And the mountain said, and I heard it say again, whisper to me. That's why I call it whispers. The mountain said, no, but today I'm real hard. You think you can just show up because I've given you so many talents and gifts, your size, and you think you can just show up and beat me. But today I'm really hard. And I'm like, oh, man, I know. I'm feeling my body was beat up last year. And then it gave me this lesson that said, Bryan, it's in the training I grow and develop you. If you skip that part of the training, you don't change. You may get to the outcome and succeed, but how did you evolve? Where did you change? And the part of life is the ability to evolve and change. And I always say to be tested is how you get a testimony. Like you said, failure. Yeah, I was tested. And now I have a testimony to go through of saying, all right, yeah, it beat me up. It won the first time. So this past year, I took that lesson of, it's in the training. It's in that that's where the growth takes place, where you get to evolve as a person. You
Mm-hmm.
get to change. Physically, I got in the best shape of my life, turning 49. Mentally, how I handle things, the peace that I have within, because it's just like you've gone through a test. And what you get to become over 3 to 4 months of cutting out the world and just focusing on what the outcome is. And I took that to heart what the mountain told me last year. And I had just it was just amazing. It was just a beautiful place to be. Um, I completed it in 32 hours. Really was, I said, one of my goals was not just to finish, but to finish with my body feeling great. And I did. I mean,
Oh,
there were definitely some things that are going to hurt when you do that, but my body felt, from my standpoint, great
wow.
after doing that for 32 hours. And
Well,
that was a
congratulations.
testimony. And then the second phase is, not only did I want to do one mountain this year, I go to Whistler in a couple weeks, Whistler, Canada, to do another mountain. Same event, 36 hours. This one's a little longer of a mountain. Uh, the weather's supposed to be some challenges because it's rain and heat. And so part of it's going, I heard a guy say to me, he said, Bryan, you know why people do these events? They do it to find the cracks within their spirit, the cracks within them.
Mm.
They learn so much about themselves, pushing themselves to limits that they didn't know were possible out of them. And just, it's a weekend, it's a Friday, Saturday, and you're done, and you're back at your computer on Monday. And that mountain will always be there. Your life will continue to go on, and eventually you'll graduate this earth, but that mountain will be there. And it's just something special about pushing your body physically and your mind to limits. Because when they're really exhausted and expired, that's when you get to tap into that spirit of you, and you get this really
Wow.
presence of that spirit within you. And it's a beautiful place to get to experience. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to Whistler, and then that will be my 2 for this year. And when you're done, you get this beautiful red hat. That's your prize. You get a red hat that says you've accomplished it. And one of the neat things is you cannot buy a finish line. And if you think about
Yeah.
that quote, you cannot buy a finish line. Like last year, I did not get a red hat, and that really, when I completed the 18th ascent, going on my 19th ascent, that's how many times you had to do this mountain at Jackson. Was
Ooh.
19 times. When I got done with 18 and I went down to 19 to brand the board, tell them I'm going up for 19, I said, it feels so good to be back in the winner's circle. That feeling of being back in a winning circle,
Yep.
of having defeat the year before, it's an incredible feeling. And I think those that understand like rising back up under defeat, and then going back after something that just has
It's really, I got to tell you, it is really, really impressive because I can't imagine me personally doing one of those events, much less multiple events. Maybe I ought to change your nickname or something. Call yourself the financial Sherpa or something.
Bill, that is hilarious. That's so funny you say that, because yesterday I was being interviewed on a radio show, and that's what he said. You're like a financial Sherpa. That's funny. That is great. You both have said that.
It's true, though. I mean, it's really true. It's impressive. Wow.
Well, thank you.
So let's talk about the economy, okay? Let's switch gears a little bit here and what's going on in the economy. Because anybody who's invested in the stock market or in the markets, period, know what's been going on lately. And it looks like we're finally going to see an interest rate cut in September. So, 2 questions. One, what does that possibly mean to the retirement plan? And this is tied into that because, look, I'm a boomer, okay? I am. Freely, I'll admit it. And every time I see somebody say, "Hey, boomer," I usually think things that I can't say on your podcast. And it's I just and it's usually somebody writing as a millennial just to twerk me and just get me ticked off. But this headline intrigued me because this is absolutely true. Hey, boomer, you're addicted to stocks. And Bryan, I am. And the article said the boomer generation, despite 2008 crash, has had a lot of success with stocks in the markets as they get ready to retire, and they're having a hard time divesting themselves of risk. Amen, amen, amen. I am addicted to growth. So, first of all, do you find that that's the case? And if it is, how do you help wean them off of it? And especially in the face of possibly declining interest rates.
Yeah, that's a couple questions within them, and they're great questions. Let's go with the first one because one is redefining the term retirement. If you look up retirement in the dictionary, it does mean to fade away, to go to sleep, rest. So I think just one, as a country and a culture, we need to change that word or what it actually means. Because if you think about the first stage of life, it was all about playtime. When you were a kid, it was playtime. Then we went to school, then we worked for many years. Now we're back on this backstage. We just call it retirement. I want to call it's another form of playtime. It's a time of life to have these experiences of travel, family, impact, legacy. Yeah. So I think that's one thing is we got to get the definition change. The second part about that, and I'll address the interest rate cut here in a minute, is looking at what the growth in stocks and the baby boomers, how they have related to it. And the answer is many people just have a belief that they're having to play catch up, that they may be behind. And and so because of that belief system, they may be taking on more risk than they really need to or should be taking based upon where they're at in their journey. So, and the second part of that is are they taking more risk to keep up with a lifestyle that are things that they want or may need in that next phase of life and that playtime? So I think it definitely needs to be addressed and looked at. What's their sleep at night? Because, talking about a mountain, the financial Sherpa, the strategies that are applied, climbing a mountain, going up on the ascending side, let's call it the ascending side, the growth side, when you're in accumulation phase of life, the accumulation phase of being from maybe 25 to 60 years old, 65 years old. Yeah. That's the accumulation going up the mountain. Those 30 to 40 years of going up, the strategies you're using to accumulate and save money will be different as you descend down the mountain, as you begin taking distributions out for the next 30, possibly 40 years of your life, from 65 to 85 to 95. So the strategies are different. And if you're using the same strategies that you use to accumulate, to ascend, to build your nest egg that you're using to descend, you may find yourself taking on more risk. There's a financial term called sequence of returns. And within sequence of returns, that's when you're really looking at saying, all right, when you're putting money away and saving in the accumulation phase, and the markets has variety of returns every year. You have up markets, down markets, what that looks like, because you're not taking money out in the accumulation phase. But as you start taking distributions out and you look at the sequence of returns of having those negative years, those positive years, the impact of those negative years and the distributions that are coming out on top of that, what's the impact that can have on your financial portfolio, on the length, the longevity of your portfolio sustaining your life expectancy? And not even sustaining, if you even have a greater purpose of legacy, impact, transferring wealth down to family, what's that impact? So it's really looking at what strategy are you using as you not just accumulate, but as you descend, come down the mountain in your portfolio. So yeah, people are probably taking maybe a little bit too much growth, and then looking at other financial instruments that can come alongside and say, all right, one of the questions I really do ask, and I'll play that thought in a second, but one of the questions that should be addressed on the accumulation side as well as on the distribution side of life is saying, what rate of return, I'll go with the ascending, going up the mountain, the accumulator, what rate of return do I or should I be earning on my money to grow these assets so they can last my life expectancy adjusted for inflation? So like, what should I be earning? What do I need to be earning on it? So you got to know what's that goal line look like. Now, if you're on the descending, coming down the distribution phase, the same question occurs. What rate of return should I be earning on these assets to have them last me my life expectancy? Now with distributions coming out, what does that look like on the downside? And then if we do have these economic volatility that we've experienced in the past couple of weeks, which hasn't been that great, I mean, 8, 10% down. Overall for the year, still up. But when that next big crash, that next wild stream of volatility does come, what impact will that or can that have on your overall portfolio, the strategy?
Yeah.
Or could you be positioned to ride through that with a little bit more peace?
Yeah, but just to stay with this theme for a second and justify myself a little bit, Brian.
Please do. We all do.
And you're welcome to change my mind. I look at, lately, yes, like I just bought some 3-month CDs where I'm getting 5.5%. So that's great. Okay. But in a declining interest rate environment, I'm looking at a whole lot lower rates of returns, and I have to tie them up for a longer period of time. And I'm looking at that versus stocks and thinking, it's not that big a stretch to think that over a year I could get 7% as opposed to committing to 10 years and not getting 7%. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that goes in that interest rate question of saying, do you want to tie money up at a known rate today? Because whether it's CDs or, I had a client just last week that came in sitting in cash over at one of the big name banks.
Right.
And one, I said, what are you earning on that money? And it's amazing to me that these banks are ripping people off, still
yes, they are. Wow.
1% interest rates when we know that you can go into money markets, pure liquidity, and get at least 4 to 5% in that situation. They're just ripping people off. It's a shame. But what we were talking about was saying, well, if you move that over into a money market, what's going to happen? Well, one, when interest rates do get adjusted and they go down, your value is going to stay the same, but the rate you're going to earn on your money is going to go down.
Mm.
So if you can go get 4.5 now, they drop it at maybe, I'll just give an example, a point, and maybe you're only earning 3.5 now. So the question is, do you want to lock any percentage of your portfolio up for maybe a year, 2 or 3, just to get a known rate? Because the risk is, are interest rates going to go up or down in the next year or 2?
Right.
Well, I don't hear any conversation about them going up, seeing that we already had 21 interest rate increases over the last 2 years. So probably not going up anytime soon. Going down is where the conversation is.
Yeah.
So if we know they're going down, now what we have to understand is it's not just CDs. There's other opportunities in the marketplace than CDs. Let's just talk about annuities, because whether annuities get a good reputation or a bad one, they're just a financial instrument. We have to understand they're just an instrument. And there's all sorts of ways to use an instrument. It's almost like saying, are all guns are bad? Yeah, if they're put in the wrong hands. But a stapler could be a weapon too in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
It can be used as a weapon. So it depends on how the instrument's used and is it designed there for you. So one of the instruments we like to use as part of I'll give you an example. So, Bill, have you ever driven from Miami down to Key West?
No, I've been to Miami and driven around Miami, but I did not hit south down to Key West, regrettably.
Well, it's an incredible drive from Miami down to Key West, but there's one part of this trip that's called the 7 Mile Bridge.
I've seen pictures of that. Yeah.
It's just a long road for 7 miles over water. So the question I like to ask clients in this scenario is saying, now this is a 2-lane road that has a speed limit of 60 some miles per hour, 7 miles long over a body of water. Again, 2 lanes separating you from the water.
Yep.
Now, if there were no guardrails on the 7 Mile Bridge, if there were no guardrails and you had that same 2-lane road, how fast would you be driving your car if you had your family in that car over that bridge?
I'd probably be going pretty slow.
Right. Because it's 2 lanes separating you and this water with no guardrails.
No guardrails.
So what we're talking about here is when clients or portfolios and strategies are able to have guardrails to them, the purpose of the guardrails say, hey, you can go at faster speed maybe on a part of your portfolio, knowing that we have other instruments in place that can guardrail your assets. And that's where we like to even look at what are called fixed index annuities. One, because of the low cost and no cost structure within them, helps bring down the overall portfolio costs. Yep. Two, we know that they have features with some guarantees to protect assets in there. Now, those guarantees from disclosure are based upon the financial backing of the insurance company. And this is not a recommendation by any means. It's just a conversation.
Yep. No.
But these annuities give those guardrails as a portion or a part of your portfolio to say, hey, you can go faster. So those individuals like you, Bill, talking about, yeah, you can go pick up maybe 7% in the markets instead of being locked into something. Yeah. What I like to say is, well, what if you could have both? Why not have an and strategy? Saying I have assets that can be in the markets that are doing whatever the market is giving, and I have something that can complement, give me those guardrails in the event that the volatility has come with presidential elections, crazy talk of rising taxes if Kamala or Biden and whoever, what impact these things could have on our economy. So having those buffers, those guardrails in, can you allow you to go that speed faster on one side, but protect the assets on the other? So I try to look and say it's not either or. We should be having and conversations.
Well, yeah, a lot of those conversations, I think what you're alluding to is a conversation that financial advisors, at least some, try to have with their clients about balanced portfolios. You're like, yeah, you can be exposed to stocks, but you're probably wise to have some kind of fixed income instrument in your portfolio, just to kind of, you're not 23 anymore. You're 67 or 70 or whatever it is, and you're going to be drawing down on that money, not adding to that money. Did I hear you right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the idea, because you're in your playtime now. This is the stage of life that you're not in these working years. This is the time to enjoy your fruits of the labor, and you're going to be distributing money out during this playtime.
Yeah. But that's a hard transition to make. It's a hard transition to make. So what do you tell your clients in terms of, if I were a client of yours, I'd be like, Bryan, I just don't want to give it up. And I like this stuff, and I'm not sure, how you loosen my grip a little bit, I guess is the question I have.
Well, I think that's just a matter of where everybody is in their stage of life. And it's actually just more having clarity on what's the plan and the strategy doing for them. Yeah. So one of the things that we are doing now, and we've done for many of our clients and new clients coming on, is we're giving a free portfolio review, looking at people's overall assets, looking at fees, expenses, looking at mainly risk. What risk is the current portfolio taking relative to where they should be, or what they should be doing to get them where they want to be? So it's managing that side of the risk with what is that rate of return question. And then, I might have said this before in the show, but if you're taking your family on a road trip from, I live in Florida to California,
right?
You just don't put them in the car and then all of a sudden, like, you see the storm come and say, whoa, there's a hurricane alert on the radio going through Mississippi. Maybe we should pull over and check the tires and windshield wipers, our oil, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the time when the storm's there. You do that when you're leaving the home. So that's part why we want to offer this portfolio checkup to say, hey, how are you positioned to ride through any unknown or known storm that could be coming? So when it comes, you're able, with confidence, or at least a little bit more peace, saying, hey, we are prepared for this. We've designed things. We've had conversations. We can ride through it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for people who are listening to this podcast, and maybe they're new to it, maybe they listen to one or two others. I realize you have clients who listen to it, so they obviously know about the portfolio review. But if you have people who are listening for the first time or are thinking, maybe I'd like to have a conversation with Bryan and the team, who do they reach out to? How do they get a hold of somebody? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bill. So if you go to Repple, REPPLE, Wealth, I hope you know how to spell that, WEALTH group.com. That's ReppleWealthGroup.com. You can check our website out. On there, there's a calendar link. You can get a a consultation scheduled, or if you're a client, please come in. Let's just set up a meeting and let's do a review and just kind of see how you're positioned.
Beautiful. The other thing you can do if you're listening to this podcast for the first time is do yourself a favor and hit follow. That's pretty easy. That way you become a subscriber to the podcast. And when Bryan drops new episodes, you can listen to them. You'll be notified. You won't have to worry about when and where you heard it or how often he puts them out, because you'll be notified and you can give it a listen. I would add that if you like it, would share it with people. Word of mouth, we like that. That would be awesome. And if you have any feedback, reach out to Bryan. If you've got questions, reach out to Bryan. He's an accessible guy. He would welcome the conversation. I know that for sure. Meanwhile, I'm Bill Tucker. On behalf of Bryan and everybody at Repple Wealth Management, thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I want to remind you that you can go out today and make today a great day or not. It's your choice. Choose wisely. Until next time.